Today on Exploring Nevada, we step back in time as we visit several historic buildings in northern Nevada that played a key role in our state's colorful past. Local groups and volunteers are working tirelessly to preserve these historic treasures with the assistance of the Nevada Commission for Cultural Affairs. Our first stop is the Comstock, whose gold and silver mines created overnight fortunes for the winners and despair for the losers in the 19th century. Today, it's one of the most vibrant historic districts in the nation.
Ron, we're pretty lucky to have this historic district right in our backyard, right outside of Reno. What is the significance of this area?
Well, as you know, it's a beautiful resource, but the Comstock mining district was internationally famous in the 1860s and 1870s. What remains there is a resource that everyone can enjoy and learn about the past just by going up there and visit. Unfortunately, it's had a dramatic decline in population since its original 20,000 or so people who lived there, now only 1,000 or so. So it's been very difficult to keep the resource, the buildings and the archaeology rehabilitated and cared for properly so that visitors can enjoy it and learn from it.
And the Cultural Commission has been involved with a number of different properties up there?
It has. Of course, the Comstock Historic District Commission dates to 1969. It's one of the first efforts at preservation in the nation. The Commission for Cultural Affairs first started awarding grants there in 1993. And a great deal happened between 69 and 93, but they're very fortunate for the infusion of those bond dollars that have occurred up there. And 5 properties have benefited from Commission for Cultural Affairs funding. They're really crown jewels of the preservation program, not just in the state, but in the nation.
What was it that called out to the Commission in particular about these different properties?
Well, the Commission's mandate is to rehabilitate historic buildings to be used as cultural centers, but also to keep an eye toward tourism. And Virginia City is a magnet for tourists, as well it should be. And if our viewers haven't seen it, you need to go up there. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful place. It gets roughly 1 million visitors a year, and yet there's always a quiet moment in a secluded part of the cemetery or here or there that really allow you, the visitor, to become appreciative of the past. It's evocative of something special that occurred over a century ago.
Well, let's start with Piper's Opera House. That certainly attracts a lot of attention.
Piper's is, you know, we can overuse the word, I suppose, but it was internationally famous. It attracted stars from all over the world. And here it is, this gem of a hall that with the best acoustics that I've ever performed in. With my bagpipe band, we had a performance up there and lecturing up there. It's a wonderful place. The Commission for Cultural Affairs has made sure that that facility will continue to have wonderful performances well into the future. The Fourth Ward School was rehabilitated in a program that began actually in 1984 with federal grant dollars from my office. The Commission for Cultural Affairs picked up the baton in 1993, and it is now a multi-use facility with many of its floors available for public use, and it has programming, a little local museum, and the kids love it. You got to bring your kids up there just to sit in an old school desk and wear a dunce hat, and then go into the little local museum and see what the Comstock heritage was all about. You know, it's not just northern Nevada. It's all over the West. Many California resources, from mercury mines to all sorts of supplies and agriculture, fed the Comstock. So it's an important place for everyone. Fireman's Museum is a sweet little building and a nice program. They have operating hand pumpers in there. They have all sorts of fireman's memorabilia. With a small amount of dollars from the Commission for Cultural Affairs, we ensured that that structure would remain a beautiful place to visit. St. Mary's Hospital was the place to go if you were sick. You wouldn't want to go to the county facility. St. Mary's was much better. But it is now an art institute, and you can rent rooms there. Artists rent rooms there and stay on the Comstock and take lessons in water painting and drawing and all sorts of arts.
And just down the hill, you've got the Gold Hill Depot.
The Gold Hill Depot, one of the finest remaining structures from the Virginia and Truckee Railroad, the queen of the short lines. And it operates as a local museum on a stop on the V&T Railroad. Take a ride on the railroad and and get off and take a look at the depot. It's a lot of fun. And again, very little money has been used to save that structure, give it a new roof and now a new foundation.
And the old train's running in the summer.
The train runs from spring to late fall, and it's well worth the ride. And Gold Hill's fun too, so it's right down the hill from Virginia City, and the train's a perfect way to get there.
What's the best time of year to visit the Comstock?
That's a good question. I've loved to be up there in a January rainstorm when there's nobody on the streets and you can really feel the 19th century. I think there's not a bad time to be up there. Every time it has its own flavor and its own sense of what it was all about. But if you want to make sure that you don't end up slipping around on icy roads, really any time from April to November are good times to go up there.
And in fact, a great time to be up there is in May, when you have Historic Preservation Archaeological Awareness Week.
They have wonderful celebrations up there in May with Historic Preservation Week. They have archaeological digs very often going on in the summer, and there's room for volunteers, and we appreciate the public coming up just to see, but also to volunteer for those things. And then there are camel races in September. It's ongoing fun, and they have more parades than any other community in the nation.
One last note in terms of preservation, if people are interested in their own communities, perhaps in a building or in getting involved in a project, it sounds as if community involvement is a good thing for
Absolutely.
Getting these projects going.
We need help, whether it's volunteers or donations to local efforts. And one thing you can do is check out the webpage, nevadaculture.org. There's always opportunities to examine there, or call the office, and you're going to be
We'll
displaying
put the phone number up.
Right, please do.
So that people can find out more if they're interested, if they're from other parts of Nevada and they're interested in getting behind one of these buildings that maybe once was a white elephant but has a shining future.
And every community has one.
Coming up next, a 19th century brewery turned art center in Carson City.
Cleared, and he
realized there was a rider and a saddle on his back, and he exploded. Only in Nevada.
You know, the Brewery Art Center has been one of our really outstanding projects. This is a Carson City facility that is in a historic brewery that was served as a printing shop for the local newspaper, and now is the center of one of the state's proudest and finest arts culture groups. They do tremendous work there, and the Commission for Cultural Affairs found them an excellent project to support. We're very glad that they're up and running and that they have a rehab facility that looks as great as it does.
Joe, what is the Brewery Arts Center all about in the community today?
Gwen, we've been in existence for now the better part of 25 years, and we've seen a lot of growth in this great art center of ours in the west side of Carson City. We're serving approximately 40 to 50,000 people a year who come here for an arts class or to visit our visual art exhibitions, or come to a play, or come to a musical performance. We put on well over 100 performances a year in all the various performing arts disciplines: dance, music, and theater, as well as visual art exhibitions and the like. So we've come a long way in those 25 years.
And you're certainly located in a wonderful old building. What have the historic preservation dollars been able to do here?
Without them, actually those historic preservation dollars have been the linchpin of exactly what we've been trying to accomplish. You need space to be able to put on the kinds of performances that we have. So these dollars have helped us to leverage other foundation dollars and community dollars, both public and private, to be able to restore this beautiful old historic building and turn it into a cultural center.
Well, this room that we're sitting in right now is marvelous. It has a wonderful old feeling. It's got these beautiful red velvet curtains. Can you tell us about this room? What was it before, and what did you manage to do in here?
Well, I've heard some volunteers say that it was a house for pigeons at one time, but this was the original home of the Masonic Lodge number 1, and it was the Masonic Lodge from 1864 to 1915, and it was a beautiful space at that time. And from that, it became a storage area, and eventually when the newspaper took over the old brewery building, which was the Nevada Appeal, In the 1940s, they used it for a variety of their functions. And when we inherited it in 1976, when we bought it from the folks at the Nevada Appeal, we inherited a building that was in very, very poor shape. So when you look around here, not only do you see the great historic preservation dollars that have helped us to level the floor, put hardwood floors in, to restore a lot of what we think originally it looked like.
The chandeliers, are those an example?
The chandeliers are an example. They're stark representations of what was in here when the Masons met in here. So we try to bring it back to its historic glory, but we also wanted to turn it into a cultural space. You see a lot of sweat equity here, people who came and painted, stained, verithaned, and worked so hard to turn this space into the space that we're comfortably sitting in today.
So a lot of people are very proud of this building.
Yes, we feel like we've done a good service for the community. A two-story building sitting on the west side on the corner of King and Division Street, 2 blocks away from the main drag. We have one of the greatest old historic buildings in Carson City, and we've preserved it, saved it, and turned it into a very viable use. We use it for everything from poetry readings to rehearsals for our children's theater programs. The community uses it for a variety of community meetings, whether it be economic development or arts groups. We use this for a variety of purposes. It gets a lot of use. Strong, sturdy building.
And even as we speak, your complex is growing. What is the vision for the nearby historic St. Teresa Catholic Church?
Oh gosh, I'm glad you asked. We have since 1976 been the owner of an entire city block on the west side. With this historic building, we were able to also adapt and reuse the outbuildings associated with that to turn it into a black box theater to seat 120. Our administrative offices, put an art gallery in there, and our classroom areas, including our really wonderful pottery studio. But now we've acquired St. Teresa Catholic Church, which is adjacent to us right across the cross street, Minnesota. So now we have 2 blocks, city blocks, and we have a church that has the potential to become a 300 to 350 seat recital hall with absolutely church-like acoustics, wonderful sight lines, great sound, and a lot of additional storage space. And so we have the vision now of connecting the two properties, adding studio space to it, additional visual art exhibition space, and turning the 2 blocks into a green area where people can really come and enjoy spring, summer, and fall, outdoor festival kinds of things, presentations. We've got big dreams, and it wouldn't have happened without historic preservation dollars getting us started with being able to convert these historic buildings into cultural centers.
Now, is this the kind of place then where people are coming even to spend the weekend? They're certainly coming in for special events, but I guess the question is Carson City the kind of place where families and individuals can come and spend some time?
Absolutely. We tie in with the tourism, both the local tourism organization, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and state tourism, to make sure that we put on cultural programming at night, whether it be a wonderful play representing the life of Mark Twain and or other kinds of historically representative programming, or just great music, the Reno Jazz Orchestra and the like, and tie it in with the kinds of events that bring people here for the day, who are touring the west side or other great spaces in Carson City, the State Museum, the Railroad Museum, and a variety of
Virginia City is nearby.
Virginia City. And then we get them down here to come to a concert in a beautiful concert hall at night. We hope that they stay for several days and enjoy our great town.
Thank you, Joe, for spending the time with us, and don't go away. We'll be looking at more historic properties around Nevada.
The Douglas County High School was one of the first projects funded by the Commission for Cultural Affairs, and it really became a remarkable success story. The people down there were fantastic. They didn't get as much money as they hoped for. No one ever does out of the Commission for Cultural Affairs. There's so many applicants. But they came forward with match and effort and donations that you just can't believe. And as a result, that project was propelled forward, finished rapidly, and now is one of our finest local museums.
And here to elaborate on this magnificent structure is Marlena Hellwinkle, who is the president of the Carson Valley Historical Society.
It was the former Douglas County High School, and it's been now renovated into the Carson Valley Museum and Cultural Center. And that was all done by the Carson Valley Historical Society. We were the instigators of preserving the building. It was going to be torn down by the Douglas County School District. And there was so much love for the valley and the community that we decided we would bite the bullet and save the building. And that we did.
Did it seem like a daunting project back then to have this wonderful large building that probably would cost a lot of money?
Yes, indeed. It was a little bit overwhelming, and at times we wished we maybe hadn't committed ourselves. Of course, it took lots of community support, which we got. Every time we turned around, we had community support. The volunteers that did the work were overwhelming. It was amazing to me, being born and raised here in Carson Valley and graduating from this old high school. It was amazing to me that so many of our volunteers were newcomers to the community. And so they put maybe a lot more sweat and tears into this building than some of us alumni did.
So what's involved in saving an old building?
Time and sweat and tears, as I said before. You look at the building and you try to save and keep it as the same as it was. So we pretty much saved all the rooms the same size as they were as the original high school. And the large study hall where we're sitting in now is our main gallery. The exterior was kept the same. We did not change the exterior at all. Plus the fact we wanted to be on the National Registry of Historic Places, so we could not change the exterior of the building.
So it looks exactly the same as it did.
On the outside. The alumni, when they come back, they'll see that we preserved all the original interior doors, and they are big, about 4 foot, 4.5 foot wide doors. They're huge doors. And then where we could, we saved the transom over the door. So it still has the flavor of a high school to the alumni, especially.
The rails on the stairs?
The banisters, they're all original. And they were all scraped and painted and restained. So we had not only sweat and tears, but a lot of knuckle busting events too. Probably the hardest thing was scraping the floors, because there was not just one layer of paint or linoleum, but then when they got down to the hardwood, they had to scrape that too. And then feeding the crew. We had a little bit of trouble feeding the crew, so the community there donated lunches, and we had usually weekends that everyone spent their weekends here.
How do you feel when you walk through the building now?
Oh, I'm very proud of it. In fact, I think the whole community is very proud of it, and we invite people to come in and see what we've done.
And you are a museum. What do people necessarily have to see when they come?
Oh, we want them to see the Washoe Room. Of course, that's our local Indian community. And then we have history of the agriculture that is very important to Carson Valley. And we have the original printing press from the local newspaper. And then we have a nice display that is on the lower level depicting the telephone changing from the old crank telephone to what we have today.
You have changing gallery also.
Yes, we have an exchanging exhibit room that's right now is the Keeping the Valley Green, which includes a very controversial issues right now about saving open space. We have an interactive youth gallery that we're very proud of, and that encourages the youngsters in the community to take part and to know what a museum is, that it's just not an old dusty place. A museum is an up and coming, exciting place to be in.
Next up, 2 more old schools, both enjoying new lives as performing arts centers.
Gather around. Now everyone, this is an exhibit of an Ice Age mammoth. Now long ago in Nevada, these ancient elephants rummaged through springs and stream beds for food.
Imagine at one time, herds of these huge animals roamed in what might have been your own backyard. You'd be amazed.
The Oates Park School in Fallon and the Arrington Grammar School, large white elephants in the community. They needed help. Everyone wanted to save them, but there was a question of what they could be used for. Fortunately, both communities have aggressive arts councils that saw a purpose and saw a need that could be fulfilled by rehabilitating these structures and putting large theater additions. It required a lot of money. The Commission for Cultural Affairs was supportive, but fortunately, and indeed it couldn't have happened without a great deal of local match and effort. Millions of dollars were put up to the plate by the locals, and that made the difference and made these things happen.
This is quite a building, Valerie. When you folks were looking for a home for the arts community back in 1990, or for the Arts Council, I guess, what was it that spoke to you about this place?
Well, it was large enough that it offered us an opportunity to house the programs that we already do, performing and visual arts, literary readings, things like that. But also it was historically significant for the community. And we had investigated doing ground-up construction, and it was actually more expensive than doing a renovation project like this. But looking at this building and seeing how beautiful it is, and also how important it is to people in Fallon, it was far more attractive to take on something like a project like the renovation of the Oaks Park School into an art center.
Was it meaningful to you that it was designed by a renowned architect?
Yes, it was. Frederick de Longchamps. This is frequently thought of as being his first school that he had designed in Nevada.
So in 1990, when you first started looking at this school, did it seem like a pretty daunting project, a large brick building that needed a lot of work?
It has never seemed like a project that wasn't going to happen. Once the Arts Council decided to do it, there has never been any doubt in our minds that it was going to get accomplished. We had a lot of community meetings with folks around town, and this has always been supported by the community to such a large degree, and people are so happy about seeing the building return to community use that it was a project we knew we could do, always.
What were some of the most satisfying moments for you during the renovation of this space?
Well, there was a couple of them, actually. The fact that people hadn't seen the historic pediment out front since 1954, the earthquake of 1954. All the bricks had fallen in, and it had been replaced with plywood. So it was just painted over plywood, and they hadn't been able to see how it had originally lived for that first 50-odd years. When that was restored, that was really significant. And also, when we decided to go ahead with renovation, we had a party, a Sunday afternoon, an open house for everybody to come in and look at the building. And we tore off the plywood off of the top story windows to let the light into the building that hadn't been coming in. It's making me have goosebumps right now to see that. It was really great. It was wonderful.
Well, this area that we're sitting in right now on the stage of what will eventually become the theater, what was the idea about this, and was it part of the original school?
It was not part of the original school, but de Longchamps had designed an auditorium in this exact spot. And during our meetings with the architect and the designers, there's no space in the building that could accommodate a theater of this size, and that's what this community needs. So I think it's really interesting, though, that there was an auditorium planned for this exact spot.
So they probably didn't envision quite such a beautiful auditorium.
Probably not. It was probably more of a school-oriented kind of smaller thing, but this has turned out really beautifully.
Well, what is the Art Council's vision for the school, this theater included?
Well, we intend to use it, and that was always our original plan. We do present a performing visual art season, do poetry readings, things like that already, and have done since 1985. So we intended to use it for all of our events and make it available to other arts organizations in the community, the Dancers Company, the local theater group, the high school theater when they want to do productions in a different kind of stage setting. But what's happening is we're getting inquiries that we hadn't anticipated until the last year or so about uses for the building, conventions, the Miss Fallon pageant, wedding receptions, anniversaries. So it's developing, it's an art center, but it's got a community center kind of appeal for the people in Fallon also.
So it's kind of becoming much more of a, what, sort of a home for the community?
A home for the community. People, there's a wonderful energy about the building. People love the building. There's a lot of longtime Fallon people who've gone to school here, or their grandparents went to school here. They're familiar with it. They think it's a beautiful building, and they really like the idea of returning it to community use. And because it was abandoned basically when we first moved in, and now it's full of energy again. And it's got the lights on and people in it, and it's wonderful.
For those of us who don't live in Fallon, is there a way for people in other parts of the state and in California, surrounding states, to become a part of this place in some way?
Well, we are a network of art centers that we already work with Brewery and Yarrington and Virginia City, Lear Theater, and we work with them in what's called block booking. We have a lot of artists that go around from place to place. We advertise. We already draw folks from out of town, from Northern California, to come to our events. So yes, anybody that wants to come is welcome to. We have a website they can look us up on as well.
Okay, and you have some events going on already, is that right? And,
Yes.
And talk about your grand opening too.
The grand opening is scheduled for February of 2003, and we would love for anybody to come to that and just give me a call and let me know, because tickets are going to go fast, I know. But it is going to be open all weekend for people to come in and look at the building.
Terrific. And
Yeah.
then you also have some sort of a bar too, where you have readings.
Yes, we do it every month or so. It's called the Art Bar, and it's a social. And people come in and have cocktails, and they bring artwork and bring hors d'oeuvres and socialize. And it's a very, very nice way for them to see all of the progress that's going on in the building. And they get to visit with people they don't get to see, but maybe at the Art Bar. And that's that kind of community center. It's like those old-time socials. And people love it. They love to come in here and do that. And anybody's invited to that.
Well, thank you. It's a wonderful building, wonderful project. And we're going to now go down the road, about an hour down the road, to Yarrington to see what a completed grammar school that's turned into a theater also now looks like.
The mission of our restoration board was to renovate this building and restore it for a cultural center for this community. And Gene Deeney, the late Jeannie Deeney, was the head person in terms of that pursuit. And we've built this into a cultural center where people meet in this community, and people from beyond come here because of this building and the things that go on culturally. And we look for bigger and better things in the future from this building, and we think that it will cause the community to understand culture even that much better because of it.
The imaginative reuse of historic buildings is taking place throughout Nevada, with support from the Commission for Cultural Affairs. Please join us in preserving and celebrating our state's colorful heritage. Visit our website at nevadaculture.org or call the State Historic Preservation Office at 775-684-3448. Besides administering grants, the Preservation Office maintains the state and national registers of historic places and runs the State Historic Marker Program. Thanks for watching, and see you next time on Exploring Nevada.
Born to the saddle.